Hey everybody, it's Royce, and today we're going to be making a load screen for our games. Let's get started. First, we're going to start with a control node, and next we're going to add a progress bar to our control node. I'm going to move our progress bar... actually, I'm going to switch our max value of our progress bar to about 1.0. I'm going to set our minimum on layout on the x-axis to about 200. I'm going to set this in the center of the screen, and I'm going to attach a script to our progress bar. I'm going to call this sceneloader.cs. Make sure it's C#. Okay, here in our C# script, we're going to be using one thing. We're going to be using a static Godot.resource-loader, and this is going to load all the files from our drive into our game. Okay, now we're going to need a couple of global variables. We're going to need a string load directory. We're going to need a node, currently loaded node, and this is going to keep track for our node for later. We're going to get a private tween, and I'm just going to call this tween. And I'm going to get a bool is loading equals false. And we're going to make this an instance. So public static scene loader instance. And in ready, we're just going to use instance equals this. Save. And now let's go down to our process. And we're going to have to do a couple checks. So first, are we supposed to load? So if we're not supposed to load, return. Second one is if our load directory doesn't have anything in it, also return. Don't load if these parameters aren't correct. Okay. Now, let's create an array. Godot.collections.array load percent equals new. So this is going to get all the data from our resource loader and essentially the load how much percentage we are currently loaded. So thread load status equals resource loader dot load threaded get status load directory load percent, and this is just going to dump our load status into our load percent. So now we can create double percentage equals, and we're just going to parse our load percent into a double, and our load percent at index 0. This only returns an array of 1. I don't know why it returns an array, to be honest. So now we can check if our status is loaded. So what do we do if we're already loaded? So if status equals resource loader dot thread load status dot loaded. First, we need to check if our tween is running, and you'll see why in a second. So if our tween dot is running, we're just going to return. Now, so we're already loaded, so is loading is false. And now we're going to create a tween. Tween equals get tree. No, not get transform, get tree. Dot create tween. Now we're going to tween a property. So tween dot tween property. And we're going to tween ourselves. So this. And we're going to tween the value because this is our progress bar. And we're going to pass in the percentage. Tween to our percentage and give the tween about 0.5 seconds. Now we're going to create a tween callback, and so this is going to run a function after our progress bar hits 100%. So tween callback, and we're going to do callable .from, and I'm going to create a function called instantiate scene. And that's good. This function doesn't exist right now, so let's just go and generate the method. There we go. And let's just delete that. That's all we're going to need if our options are loaded. Now, what do we want to do if it's actively loading? So if our load bar is equal to percentage, so if it's already at percentage, don't do anything, return. And if our tween does not equal null, also return. So if our tween is actively doing something, again, return. Now we're going to have to create another tween. So tween equals get tree dot create tween dot tween property, and we're going to pass in this. It's going to tween the value again, and we're going to pass in percentage. We're repeating ourselves, but this is fine for now. Okay, this is all we're going to need. And so what this is going to do is this is going to get status from a resource loader, update our progress bar, and then once it's done, we're going to call a function which is going to dump everything that we've loaded into our scene. So let's implement our instantiate scene. Okay, so for our instantiate scene, we're going to need a resource. So we're going to need to get the resource from our resource loader. So var resource loader dot load threaded get and pass in our load directory again. This is going to give us our resource, but we can now parse it into a packed scene, which is going to be usable for us to instantiate. So we're going to set our currently loaded node to our resource dot instantiate, and now we're going to get tree dot root dot add child, and we're going to add our currently loaded scene. Come on, currently loaded node. There we go. And now we're going to set our progress bar to invisible. So visible, this dot visible is false. And now we're going to set our is loading. Actually, we already set this to false, so we don't need to do that again. Okay. Now we need some way to pass in a scene that we want to load. This is all we're going to need for updating our progress bar and eventually instantiating a scene after our progress bar is done. But now we need to pass in something for our thing to actually load. So we're going to create a public void. So this can be called on other scripts. And I'm just going to call this load object. And we're going to take in a string for an object path. Let's check if we're already loading. If is loading, we're just going to return. Don't do anything. Don't load again if we're already loading. You're going to get errors. So now we're going to set our load directory to our object path. Now we're going to actually start loading that load directory. So resource loader.load threaded request. And we're just going to pass in our load directory. Our new load directory specifically. We're going to set our visibility to true. And we're going to set our value to 0. Just reset our loading value. And now if currently loaded node equals null, if we don't have anything in here, do nothing. But if our currently loaded node had something in it, we're just going to queue it free. Currently loaded, come on. If currently loaded node dot queue free. Or not if, but dot queue free. I never set is loading to true when we load our object. That's all we're going to need for our script. You can put this in your scene and anyone can call this and anyone can just pass in a string of where our node is and it'll load it, have a progress bar, and then remove the progress bar and put our scene into the game. That's all we're going to need. So now let's create another script to test this. And so I'm just going to add a regular node. And I'm just going to call the, and I'm going to attach a script and I'm going to call this test progress bar. We're going to need none of these functions and we're going to do a public override input. So now we're just going to check if our input, if our event dot is action pressed, what action should we do? We should do UI accept. So if I hit the enter key, what do I want to do? Well, we can call our scene loader dot instance dot load scene load object. I should have called that load scene. Load object, and now we can pass in a string. So back in Godot here, I already have a scene built. And I've just called it big scene. This is a 200 megabyte file, like a model of just a circle, and I have it in a scene. So let's load that. So to do that, we can just do res big scene .tscn. And that's all we're going to have to do. Let's give this a shot. Okay, let's load our game. Actually, let's save our scene. And then now let's load our game. And .NET's having a fit, but there we go. We've loaded our scene. This is not related to our code, by the way. This is related to .NET. Not liking my computer that much. So I can hit enter again, hit enter again, hit enter again, and that's all we're going to need. Thank you guys so much for watching this tutorial. If you got anything from this, I'd appreciate a like. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good one.